Hey everybody, and welcome to Dynamic Communities Summit Europe. We are so glad that you would take the time out of what I'm sure is a busy schedule to really be involved in the community and take the time to attend some amazing sessions. Wow, we have heard some awesome stuff this week, and I'm thankful that you would take the time to join us here today for my session. So my name is Dustin Domerese. I'm with Dynamic Consultants Group. I have 18 years in the technology industry, mostly around software as a service, platform as a service, specifically around Salesforce, Dynamics, NetSuite, some of those products. Most recently, it's been primarily all focused on the Microsoft platform in the entertainment, manufacturing, distribution, as well as some very specific wealth management and banking experience. So what I want to talk to you a little bit about today is really about how to become a great consultant. So I've worked with about 15 different Microsoft consulting companies in my career. I've worked with them from my current company, which is a partner-to-partner consulting firm, and I've also worked with them as an employee throughout the course of my consulting career. And I'll tell you that there are so many people that want to know, how do you go from being a good consultant to a great consultant? So I'll talk to you a little bit about that today. But I wanted to set that up to give a little bit of a shameless plug for the company that I'm currently working with, Dynamic Consultants Group. Dynamic Consultants Group is a partner-to-partner focused consulting company. And what we do is we provide staff aug services as well as brand new white label practices for any partner out there that wants to begin a Microsoft practice, whether it's Azure, whether it's something to do with Power Platform or business applications. We can very easily spin those up for you and help you get started very quickly in the Microsoft world. The ecosystem's just so big these days that it's really hard for a partner to stay connected with every single technology that's out there. So we can help you be able to do that quickly. We have offices all over the world, consultants all over the world. If that's something you need help with, please let us know. We'd be happy to do that. So again, the focus of today's session is how do we then become a great consultant in the consulting world? And we have met, I'm sure, through the course of your career, have met some people that you were like, wow, they are an amazing consultant. But what made them so different from everyone else? They did the same job most of the time. They worked the same way. A lot of times they even asked the same questions. But the way that they did it instilled confidence in the customer and really helped their projects to just be more successful. And I want to help try to unlock that mystery for you today, because this isn't the big stuff, it's the little things that make the difference and will really help you go from being a good consultant to being a great or an amazing consultant. And the other part of this topic is what your college degree couldn't teach you. And certainly there's some of these things I'm sure you'll remember back and say, yeah, you know, we learned some of that in college or university. But for the most part, these are things that you learn just from experience and just being good about talking to people, about communicating, and being really caring about the work that you're doing. And as we go through this, you'll see that they're very simple things, but it truly will be the difference between you becoming a good consultant or becoming a great consultant for your customers. So how do we combat that complexity? We're going to talk about 5 key things today that will help you to be able to balance the way that you're doing work and the things that are going to be able to help you to battle the complexity of being a good consultant. First and foremost, we're going to talk about building great relationships. We want to be good at working with people. The second thing we're going to talk about is how do we gather and understand the requirements that we get from the company. Those are so important to building a great system and a good foundation for future systems that you're going to build. The third thing is we want an amazing foundation for communication. So how do we then ensure that we're communicating effectively and efficiently with the customer and with our peers? The fourth thing, once you start getting into some difficult conversations, what do? How do you make sure that you're either escalating or de-escalating some things as necessary? And then the fifth thing is, how do we take all that stuff and use technology to do it? There's some very key things, not necessarily from a system standpoint, but just from a productivity and something to think about that I want to give you an idea from on how you leverage technology to do some of this. So the first thing we need to do is we need to be better at building relationships. And how do we do that? Well, First, we can't just do the work. We have to take time to truly understand the customer and build a relationship. There was a study done several years ago about something called change blindness. And I'm certainly no expert at this, but from what I understood at the study is they set up kind of a fake counter where you could go in and you could purchase things from a convenience store. And as a customer would begin interaction with the convenience store clerk, they would give them their items, they would scan them, and as they would begin to pay, the clerk would say, "Oh, hold on just a minute." They would duck down behind the counter, they would come back up, and it would be a different person that came up from behind the counter. And the interaction would then continue. The customer would pay for their things that they got from the convenience store, they would go on about their day. Well, as they left the building, they were being surveyed. And they would ask, "Did you notice that the person who was behind the counter changed?" And 50% or almost 50% of the people never even noticed that the person behind the counter was literally a different person halfway through their interaction. And that really shows who we are as a society, that we truly don't ever get to the point where we've built a real relationship with the people around us. And that's one of the biggest differences between a good consultant and a great consultant, is they take the time to build the relationship with their customers. They know what the customer is going to ask for before the customer ever asks for it, before they ever even know they need it. A lot of times those consultants already have a good grasp on what they need. The second thing you can do to build a good connection and to build good relationships is you have to have the heart of a teacher. This is something that we do across the board in our organization. We make sure every employee has the heart of a teacher. There's an old saying goes that if you only know 3 chords on the guitar, then teach someone who only knows 2. You don't have to be an expert to be a teacher. A teacher is a matter of the heart. It's something that you want to be. You want to help someone. You want to get them to know more about the topic that you're working with. Whether it's a Canvas app, a Power BI report, a Flow, a Power Automate, all of those things, you want to make sure you have the heart of a teacher to really be able to get your customers to the next level. Third thing about building relationships, don't just say yes. We have some amazing doers in our company. They can build some amazing Power Automate connections that connect to other systems. They can do some great work with Azure Cognitive Services and AI and machine learning, but you don't always need that. You have to keep it simple. And the best consultants are willing to challenge a customer to say, "No, are you sure you need that? Are you sure you're ready for that?" To be able to get the best out of the project. And most of the time, that means to simplify it. So don't just say yes, challenge the customers on the things that they say they need so that you can get the best solution for them. And fourth thing about building relationships, you're not always the hero. So if there's one thing that we've ever learned in working with companies is sometimes you have to be the bad guy. You have to be the one to tell them that their processes are dysfunctional, that their data is terrible, that their ideas for a report are not going to turn out the way that they want them to, that they're asking for too many fields on that form. Nobody's going to use it if you put that many fields on the form. Those kind of things are one thing that makes the difference between a good consultant and a great consultant, because a great consultant will push back on the customer and not just expect to be the hero and do it for them, but they'll push back on them to really ask the question and be the bad guy sometimes in that relationship. But to be honest, a lot of times we're just there to be therapists. We're just there to ask good questions that help drive some of that content that our customers are looking for, to pull out the requirements from them. And a lot of times it's all about, tell me about your mother and tell me about your sales team. So those kind of things will really help kind of get the requirements out so that you can then build a great system. So what I want to do in the second thing, in gathering and understanding requirements, I want to try to give you some good leading questions that you can ask to get some of those requirements out of your customers. Because it is hard. It's hard to sometimes get them to open up and talk. And here's some really cool ways to do that. So you have to be able to extract the right answer. And here's some ways to do it. What do you think the main challenge is? That will help open them up to be able to talk a little bit more about what they see the challenges in their organization. What do you think is working well? Why is that important to you? What do you think the impact to the team will be if we do that? What could we give the team that would make their life easier? What will be the main obstacle that everyone in the organization has if we do that? What do you think, and how do you think this will be received by the team? Those kind of questions, instead of just, tell me about your sales process or tell me what you do to get leads. Those kind of questions will help pull out not only the business requirements, but the real understanding of the relationship and better understanding how you can help your customers. So use these, definitely print them off, put them in OneNote, however you operate. Make sure you've got them in a place that you can ask those through the course of your requirements gathering sessions to truly be able to get into the guts of what it is that that customer wants. But finally, you are not as good as you think you are. So when you're pulling out those requirements, you have to make sure that you are listening. That is so key. So many times we're busy taking notes and we think we're multi-tracking. We think we're able to take notes and ask questions and check our phone and check our email and all of that. You have to focus on your customer. You will not be able to get a good relationship, and you will not be able to establish that type of deep connection and getting the requirements that you need unless you're truly paying attention. And you can't do that unless you're giving them your focus. Whether that's recording the session, going back and listening to it again to capture your notes, having a separate person that's kind of designated as the note taker, whatever it is, you're not as good as you think you are. And a great consultant knows that. A great consultant will walk in and say, I am not good at taking notes. I've brought my note taker with me, and he's going to help me take notes, or she's going to help me take notes. And really, that's going to be a good pair to where you don't have to do everything when you're a good consultant. So if you want to be great, know you can't do everything, and know that you have limitations, and build upon those and make sure that you are looking at that. There's a book out there I would highly encourage everyone to read it. It's called Leading with a Limp. It talks about how you can use the things in your life that what could be an impediment, and you can use those to your advantage. So if you're not good at note taking, it's good to delegate that to someone else. Know where you're weak and be able to lead with it, and make sure that you can be a leader in spite of those things. So number 3, we want to have good foundations of communication. There's an old AIDET. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, AIDET. And really what this is this is something you should be thinking about every single time that you're on a phone call, whether you're on some sort of a video chat, whether you're in an in-person meeting, whatever it is. So I'll tell you what it stands for. It stands for announce, introduce, duration, expectations, and thank you. Those are the 5 things that every single communication needs to have. And I'll give you an example. So let's say we're starting off a conference call. I've scheduled a meeting. I want to make sure and follow those 5 things during that meeting. So I may start off the meeting by saying, hi everyone, my name's Dustin Domerese. I'm with Dynamic Consultants Group. I've scheduled this meeting here for 30 minutes today because we want to make sure that we're getting to the requirements of your sales process. Once we get that, we'll be finished. We'll circle back with any questions, and from there we'll open it up for discussion. Those kind of things, and then at the very end, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate everyone being on this call and giving us the 30 minutes that we asked for. We'll circle back with any questions. Those 5 key things about communication will help every single interaction you have with your customers to be productive. And that is the thing, small things, that make the difference between a good and a great consultant. So also, let's talk about just the foundational things that come with just being a professional. Being a professional that can make good interactions, that can talk to their customers in an effective way. So we'll give you just some foundational things that you can do to really help yourself in your relationships. Please and thank you. I feel like I'm all of your parents or your grandparents telling you to say please and thank you, but it is missing from so many times that I hear consultants interact with customers. They're missing the please, they're missing the thank you, and they end up missing the relationship. Introduce others. So when you're with someone, introduce them. If you're on a call with other individuals, make sure you're introducing them. If you're walking into a conference room or you're talking into a meeting, make sure you introduce those that are with you. That really adds value and credibility to not only you, but the people that are supporting you. Also, handshake, where appropriate. Obviously, in the days we live in, we're going to limit those things until we can get back to it. But I can tell you that there's still nothing like being able to shake someone's hand and look at them in the eye and tell them thank you, or that we want to work with you. Those kind of things do go a long ways whenever it comes time to be the utmost professional. So when we can, we'll get back to that, where we can shake hands. Until then, do the elbow bump, whatever's appropriate for the situation that you're in. Also, don't interrupt. Whenever you're having these conversations, you're getting your customer talking, don't interrupt them. Take the time and let them talk. Again, remember, you're the therapist, right? So asking questions, asking good questions, and then letting them talk. And don't interrupt. Wait for a spot and then come in. So the other things are a little different. Keep it clean. This is something that I have seen some people that it seems like they begin to fall down. It becomes into locker room talk or some things that just get inappropriate. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail here, but think about things that you say before you say it. I have heard some conversations that make me cringe as a human, that I think to myself, are they even hearing what comes out of their mouth? And I can tell you that some of those things are the thing that makes the difference between the good consultant and the great consultant. The great consultant will never cross that boundary. They will never begin talking about things that are inappropriate. And also, avoid the big two. This kind of goes along with the same one. Religion and politics. Those two topics should be avoided at all cost. There's no reason to make an enemy out of a customer. There's no reason to voice your political differences with a customer. There's also no reason why that you should be bringing up those things on your own as topics of conversation. And I know a lot of people do it just kind of as an icebreaker or a way to make a friend, but make sure that you're avoiding those two at all costs. Proper cell phone usage. Let's talk about this one for a second. I know we all get a lot of messages. We all get a lot of texts. We all need to check TikTok. We all need to make sure that our Facebook status is updated. All of those things. But make sure that you're not doing those things during a meeting. It is distracting and it's disrespectful to be picking up your phone and looking at it whenever you're supposed to be having a direct one-on-one conversation with your customer. And they notice. I can promise you, even if they don't vocalize it, they notice and they feel different when they have your full attention and your full engagement versus when you're constantly looking at your cell phone. So keep it face down on the table, turn it off of vibrate so it doesn't constantly vibrate on the table. Make sure that you're being a professional. It truly is one of the things that make the difference in a relationship. And then that goes along with it, but just showing genuine interest in what the customer's saying. And I'm sure everyone's kind of met these people, but there's a group of people that they are just amazing at making you feel valuable in every conversation you have with them. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. You always feel valuable whenever you talk to them. You feel like what you have to say matters when you talk to them. Every one of us should strive to have that level of connectivity with the people that we work with and our customers, that they truly do know that we care about them as humans and care about them as our customers. So let's talk about email. Email is one of those things that so many people get wrong. And that's because they want a quick response or they want to be able to engage with users just in a simple way. But email should always follow a very simple protocol. And I've called out on this slide kind of 3 things to remember when you're sending email. The first thing is always, always, always have a subject, an intro, a body, and a closing. It doesn't matter whether it's a reply or whether it's just a really simple email. Make sure you have all of those components to an email. It will really be the difference between you looking really professional and being a great consultant or just being a good average email user. Second thing, spell check. Use it, right? It's there. Click the button, let it spell check, do your job. I don't know how many emails I've received that just have spelling mistakes all over, and it just seems lazy. Run the spell check, it's easy, it's simple, and it really will make you look a lot more professional. And then the other thing you can do is you can take it up a notch, and you can use a tool like Grammarly that will not only help you with spelling, but it'll help you with punctuation, it will help you with your tone of your email. There's a lot of really cool features of that product. And I'm sure there's some other ones out there that kind of offer similar functionality, but Grammarly is the one that we use internally just to make us look a lot more professional and help us to become great consultants. So let's talk a little bit more about phone calls. Phone calls are another one of those things that have kind of become less these days. You know, now it's a Teams call, a Skype call, a Zoom call, something like that, but the same applies. So think about that as you're doing these. We want to make sure that we are answering the phone appropriately, that we are giving a "Hi, this is Dustin," or some other formal greeting. We also want to make sure that if we get a voicemail, we leave a message. It's very rude not to leave a message whenever you call someone. And I know that's a habit. It's really a habit to kind of just send a quick text message rather than even calling. But sometimes in the business world, we still want to make sure that we're professional and leaving a voicemail. Avoid the merry-go-round. And to me, what that means is really just making sure that you don't constantly have calls that go in circles. I call you, leave a voicemail, you call me, leave one, I call you back. Make sure that you're switching communication. So I try to encourage our team members that if you get to the point where you've been twice, where you've called them, left them a voicemail, they've called you back, left a voicemail, switch communication. Send an email, send a text, whatever another form of communication is, because obviously phone calls are not working. So avoid the merry-go-round. Also, stop the email and make the call. This is another thing that I talk to our consultants about all the time. Many times we start getting involved, we're sending emails back and forth, try this, try that, what do you think about this, what do you think about that? All of those are good emails, but as soon as you start getting into at least 3 or 4 email threads back and forth with the customer, it probably needs to be a meeting, probably needs to be a phone call so that you can really get into the root of what the issue is or start to solve the business requirement. So stop the email, make the call, you'll have a better relationship. And then on conference calls, be fast with the mute and unmute. We don't want to have big delays in the call where you're waiting on someone to talk. We want to make sure that we're really involved in the call and that you're quick on that mute and unmute button. People can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the space bar is what you use in Teams to either mute or unmute. It's a really fast way. There's a keyboard shortcut for it. Space bar, whatever it is, use it. It'll be your friend. It quickly mutes and unmutes you, gives you that professional look and feel. Also, say and ask who's talking. We want to make sure that, especially if you have a big conference call, lots of people on it, whenever you go off mute, you would say, "Hi, this is Dustin. I have a question for Scott. Hey, Scott, what do you think about," making sure that you're doing that introduction so that way everyone knows who you are and who you're talking to every time. It may seem redundant, but it's going to be the difference between you being a good consultant and a great consultant. And use your video. We've been all doing that a lot more recently, but it really does help make that personal connection whenever we're on a conference call, a Teams meeting, a Zoom meeting, whatever type of system that you're using. So number 4, we're going to talk about the last one. And the last one is something that we call difficult conversations. And difficult conversations are really important because when they happen, it can be the difference in you walking away with an amazing relationship with your customer or everything going south and them firing you as a partner or as a consultant. So these are the points that make the difference between good and great. So the first thing you got to do is you got to recognize when you're getting into one of those difficult conversations. The tone starts to change, things begin to become kind of accusatory. Those types of things are when you know that the conversation's getting a little tough. It's time to start thinking about some of these other tools. The first thing that you should do is you should always remind the customer that we're on the same side. We are both in this for the same goal. We both want to see your system be a success. Those kind of things will help de-escalate tension. It will help you in that conversation process. So remind them that we're on the same team and that we create value together, right? I couldn't do my job without you as a customer, and you need me as a partner to really help you grow as a company. We're both in this together. We're working together to find the answer and to solve the problems. Those kind of things will really help, again, with those difficult conversations and to de-escalate tension. The other key thing there is try to see things from the customer's perspective. Many times we come in, we already know the answer, we're going to use this as our defense, we're going to defend our people, we're going to do what we think's right, but we get on the call and we're not even listening to what the customer has to say. We're not making that personal connection. And we have to do that if we're truly going to be able to have a difficult conversation and watch the outcome be success. You have to sometimes get curious to solve the problem. When you're working together, those types of creativity sessions sometimes lead to really amazing ideas. Those conflicts that happen can sometimes raise up ideas that would have never been there if the conflict wouldn't have been present. So make sure that you do that. Own your part. Really, to me, what this means is making sure that if I did do something wrong, or I could have done something better, that I call that out. That will really help de-escalate tension and will help the customer to be able to say, oh, they're not just coming in defensive, they really are trying to understand and take ownership and fix the real problem. And by doing that, you will help become a better consultant, you will have a better relationship with your customers if you own your part. Now obviously there's a fine line there. You don't want to take ownership of something that is a major problem and you didn't have anything to do with it, but I can promise you there's always something that you could have done better. And if you don't think there is, then you're probably not looking at yourself in the mirror correctly, because there's always something you could have done better. And call it out, even if it's something simple. You know what, I should have emailed you quicker. I'm so sorry that we're just now having this conversation. I should have been quicker to jump on the phone with you. Those kind of things will help take that tension down and help turn a difficult conversation into a positive one. You have to remain objective and take a breath. There's sometimes nothing better than a pause. A pause will help de-escalate things. Everyone will feel more relaxed. You'll feel better about everything if you just take a breath, show some compassion, and then start back up. And when you do start back up, validate their concerns. I understand. What I heard you say there is that you're really frustrated about this. Make sure you validate those. Their concerns are real. You want to know why? Because they feel them. Every single concern that is felt for a reason. It's because there's something going on either in their company, in their life, in their team, whatever it is that's causing that tension. So make sure that you're not dismissing it, that you're validating the concerns. Also, I try to coach all of our people about this. Don't give a slow no. If the answer is no, we're not going to give you a credit, then say it. Don't, oh, well, let me get back to you on that. Let's talk about it for a little while. You can validate their concerns and then say, and you know, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to give you a credit on that, but what we will do is X. You know, those kind of things, don't slow into it. Tell them no if the answer is no and move on. It's okay to not have the right answer. Many times we don't know the right answer. And sometimes what we need to do is take a step back, walk away from the situation, and schedule another call. If you're having a difficult conversation, you've validated the concern, you've talked about what you need to do to fix it, and then you take a step back, leave the phone call, say, you know what, let's do a little bit more research on this, let's come back and let's talk next week. You will be surprised at how many times when you come back to talk next week, that tension has dropped and you have a better relationship because you've taken some time off and away from the issue. And I can promise you that if you follow some of these things, that you will be able to have a great outcome to what could have been a very difficult conversation. So finally, let's talk about the fifth thing, which is leveraging technology. And this is going to be quick. You guys are all in the technology industry. You know how to use some of this stuff, but I just want to give you a reminder, take notes. Make sure you've got OneNote open, that you're constantly taking notes. Make sure you have good notes. Those notes will then turn into your follow-up email. Again, craft a good email, but send a follow-up. Here are my notes from the session. Here are the things we talked about. Here are the things we're going to solve. And make sure that that happens. Also, make sure that your notes get then translated into some sort of a requirements document. If you're not doing requirements documents, if you're doing something more agile, user stories, those kind of things, make sure those get translated into user stories and that they get communicated back out to your customers. Your notes turn into follow-up emails, which turn into translation into requirements documents or user stories. And then those become the tasks that your people need to do. Everything has a follow-up. You then log the tasks in a system, and everything's documented, so that way if you do get hit by a bus, the hit by the bus plan, right, that everything's there for someone else to be able to pick it up. That process should be every single meeting. Every single meeting, you take the notes, you send the follow-up email, you make sure that that translates to any user stories or requirements documents, you log the tasks, and you make sure everything's documented and ready to go for the next time. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend this session. It has been awesome this week to be able to listen to some of the amazing presenters, to be able to talk with some of you. There really is an amazing community here, and I am so grateful to be a part of just a few minutes of it. And I thank you for taking the time to join the session. If you want a copy of the slide presentation, I've got a QR code here that you can scan with your phone, and this QR code will then give you a form where you can fill in your name and email address, and I will send you my contact information as well as a copy of the PowerPoint deck. I would encourage you to start using some of this to teach your people, to teach your consultants, to teach those that work for you, to teach your customers even. Some of these things are great ways to then build better relationships and go from being a good consultant to a great consultant. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your time. Enjoy the sessions.